Good morning. This is retired Pastor Karl Schmidt from Calvary Lutheran Church, a little Lutheran church in the Amherst, New York, Western New York region. Well, it's gray today. If you tried to point to where the sun is, you wouldn't be able to. It's that gray. And yet it's only 8 o'clock in the morning? You'd think you'd at least be able to generally point to the east. The sun would rise in the east, but nope, not today. Can't tell. And it's cold. I think the actual temperature is something in the 20s, but going out with the dog this morning, wind chill is just slightly above zero probably. Just guessing, haven't looked it up, but it's cold. Genuinely cold here. It's icy, slippery, just a nasty day outside. In the church here, we're here in the third week of pre-Lent, the last Sunday of pre-Lent. This is, in the old church here, 3 Sundays that were designed before Ash Wednesday to have meditation and focus. The text assigned for this particular Sunday is from the Gospel of Luke. It's the last portion of Luke from verse 31, Gospel Luke chapter 18, particularly verses 31 to the end of the chapter. But this morning we're not going to read the entire part of it. We're going to read verses 31, 32, and 33. Because in this, Jesus describes the sacrifice, death, and torture, resurrection that he's about to experience. So this is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 18, verses 31 through 33. Then he took unto him the 12, and said unto them, Behold, we go up to Jerusalem, and all things that are written by the prophets concerning the Son of Man shall be accomplished. For he shall be delivered unto the Gentiles, and shall be mocked, and spitefully entreated, and spitted upon. And they shall scourge him, and put him to death, and the third day he shall rise again. Here ends that portion of the gospel text from the Gospel of Luke, 18th chapter, verses 31 through 33. Particularly, we're going to focus on verse 33 this morning. And they shall scourge him, and put him to death, and the third day he shall rise again. Now, this explanation of what is about to commence in the life of Jesus is not pleasant, to say the very least. It's torturous, evil, and will result in him being essentially destroyed in every way that humankind could try to destroy him. And then he'll give up his life unto death, and then rise again, 3 days. Now, a lot of people would think that if God were to send his son into the world, it would be a cushy job. Typically, a rich guy's son doesn't shovel and dig ditches. A rich guy's son doesn't get the worst job imaginable. That's just not how it usually works in this world. It would seem irrational to us. It would seem nonsensical. A rich man's son would be treated well, be sent off to Harvard or Yale, some Ivy League school, travel, and then land a cush job. That's how this world works. I think we've all seen that. And especially if you've been working in the world, you know exactly how the world works. Favoritism, nepotism. The more incompetent you are, usually that's when you are raised up in the job. It's just, in fact, there's business principles that describe this situation. It's not the cream that rises. But that's how the world works, you see. It's conniving, it's wicked, it's evil. So you would imagine that if even in the world when a rich man's son is protected from all of the harsh horrors of life, that when it comes to God sending his son into the world, it would be a particularly cushy job. You would think that he'd be waited upon hand and foot. And why even would he come here, frankly? This world is a garbage heap. It's like a dumpster fire. There's hate, there's bigotry, there's racism, there's hatred on every front. People hate irrationally just for the sake of hating. Sometimes there's absolutely no reason whatsoever. They just hate. It's a sickness. It's a disease. It's called sin. It's a brokenness that nothing this side of heaven can fix. Nothing. There's no cure for it. Drugs don't fix it. Alcohol doesn't fix it. Counseling doesn't fix it. Therapy doesn't fix it. Good wills, good intentions, moral improvement, all that garbage means nothing. At the end of the day, just as wicked as the beginning of the day. Benjamin Franklin tried his great moral experiment, and he writes as a young man that afterward he was in worse shape than he was in the beginning, and that as he tried to put away vices, it only went worse. And so that's the situation. So why would God send his son here at all? I mean, he already cursed us. He's the reason that we die. He's the reason that we get sick. He's the reason that we suffer. He's the reason that all the rotten things in this world happen, because he's cursed us. Now I say when he's the reason, it's a righteous reason. It's a just reason. He's cursed us with death. He's cursed us with, in Hebrew it's called mut, which is death, annihilation, miserable stance. And that's our destiny. It's the destiny of the planet. So why would you send your son here at all? I wouldn't. I would stay far away from this dirt ball dumpster fire of wickedness and just evil on every side. In fact, he looked upon the world in the Old Testament. He said, there is none that is righteous, not a single one. He says, they've all gone astray. Everyone's gone off in their own direction, and everyone hates God. He says, everyone hates me. This is his own description of this dumpster fire we call human life, the world. There's not a single noble person in the world. It's just a dumpster fire. And that's one of the worst smells there is when a dumpster catches fire. I mean, first off, it's filled with garbage to begin with. And, what a stink. Well, so if God is going to send his son somewhere, if I were to send my son somewhere, I have sons, I certainly wouldn't send him to this world. No way. But what does God do? Not only does he send his son here, he does not send his son here to be treated well. His purpose is quite the opposite, in fact. He's throwing his son into this world, not as a visitor, not as this isn't for frequent flyer miles. This is not a business trip. He asks his son to not only visit us, but to become one of us, to join our state, humankind, to become true God and true man. And not for just a short time, but this is permanent. He is still, today, thousands of years later, exactly as he was when he walked the earth. True God and true man. Man in every respect. He still would have to get up and go to the bathroom. His humanity is still actual humanity. He still has to eat. He still gets hungry. I mean, that might sound stupid, but it's the case. He is still true man as well as true God. Does he need to sleep? Sure, because humankinds need to sleep. This is part of being God. In fact, after the resurrection, almost every time he appeared he sat down to dinner with them. One time by the seashore, he was starting breakfast before they even were at the shore. So, I mean, eating, sleeping, going to the bathroom, washing his hands, still part of his life. These thousands of years later, he took to himself our humanity, but not to sit on the top of the pile, not to be looked up upon. Instead, he went straight to the bottom of the pile. He joined the filth, the trash, the anger, the racism, the bigotry, the hatreds, all of the kinds of debauchery. Not that he practiced them himself, he didn't. But his Father said, since you have become one of them, you share in their guilt. You share in their condition, the brokenness. The scripture says he would lay upon him the sins of us all. And so when Jesus describes the end of his earthly mission here, before the crucifixion and the resurrection, he describes it in this awful way, to be cruelly treated, spitted upon, mocked. But verse 33, and they shall scourge him and put him to death, and the third day he shall rise again. To scourge. This is not simply a to be looked down upon in an office party. It comes from the root Greek word mastigates. Mastigates is not like a Western bullwhip that's, 6 foot long and one single leather tassel. No, it's very different from that. This is a Roman trick of torture. It was either comprised of metal, leather, straps. It wasn't long. It was a close-up torture weapon. It would literally tear the skin off your back or neck or wherever it is that they applied it to you. And sometimes it had metal plates, sometimes it had leather with rock attached or glass. It was brutal, but it was meant to destroy a human being. And oftentimes being hit with a mastigates would itself result in death. And because the condition you were left in would simply mean you were going to bleed to death, most likely. And the shock of it would kill you as well. You go into shock and die. The human body isn't designed for that kind of torture. It's one of the worst things that humans have invented, to torture other human beings. And this is what Jesus describes is his lot, which is coming for him, which is going to unfold in his life, the mastigates. But also, apokateno, which in the Greek means to kill, to destroy, to annihilate. The general word for death is in Greek is thanatos, but this is apokatenos. This is a stronger word than simply death. This is to be removed from the human record. This is to be pulled out of history. This means to be annihilated, destroyed, forgotten, as though you never lived on this earth. This was the hatred, because, this is a word that is only used when the death caused is caused by, not an accidental death, not something where you step out in front of a running horse from a Roman soldier. This word is used when there is a concerted effort to destroy you, more than just physically, so that your name is never spoken again, so your family doesn't acknowledge you even existed. And this is what the Father had planned for his Son, because it's Jesus himself. Excuse me, I needed a little drink there. dry morning voice. It's Jesus himself that describes this as what they will do to him. That they will come at him with hatred. Now you see, he is the Son of God. And this is his own description of how broken human beings are about to treat him. He came to join our midst. Why? Why come here, become human being, and be thrown into this dumpster fire, this trash of humanity, which is, I'm talking universally. There are no exceptions here. I don't care if you're wealthy, if you're poor, if you're strong, if you're weak, if you're healthy, if you're sick, if you're young, if you're old. None of that even matters. The only question is, are you a human being? If you are a human being, this applies. And it's not even by human standards. It's by a God who looks at us, the world, and goes, there is none that is righteous, not a single one. If you have a disagreement with that, sure, go talk to him about it. It's his estimation, not mine. I am in no place to judge anyone, not even myself, because I'm part of that dumpster fire, part of that mess, that brokenness. So it's not my estimation. It's not like I'm yelling at anybody. It's just what he just generally describes us as. So into that mess, he sends his Son to be counted among us, and then it's appointed for his Son by the Father to die in this grisly way. Why? Well, it's not human beings that are going to go after him with hatred. It's his Father. For all of the wretchedness, brokenness, trash, dumpster fire of human existence. And the world today, we have idiots going to war. We have people who wake up in the morning to do nothing but tell lies, which is amazing in a scientific modern age, that there are people who think that vaccines are something not good, where the reality of the world is something other than they can create it by just saying, oh, yeah, and then tell their lies. They spew their filth, their trash, their garbage. As I said, it's a dumpster fire. And it's very real. Russian president attacked Ukraine, and there's people dying right now at this very moment. And he doesn't seem to give a hoot. He's some old man living in 19th century delusions. Because that's not the world of today anyways. But the world is still a broken dumpster fire, and he fits right in perfectly. Because that's the kind of trash that this world is comprised of. And that's the kind of trash that the Father said, I'm going to lump you in with. And then against his Son, he poured out his wrath. So that it was the Father who practiced apokatena against his Son. To kill, to destroy, to annihilate his Son. Because it wasn't the wrath of the Romans or the Jews or anyone else. It was the wrath of God the Father that he faced. The wrath that otherwise rests against all of us. You see, this was the purpose. That was the sole purpose of his coming. Singular purpose. Very narrow. Very narrow and singular. One purpose. To stand on this earth after having lived here in this dumpster fire trash mess, and then to be beaten to death by his Father, so that the Father would not only pour out upon him his wildly terrible anger, wrath, but at the same time he would turn his back on him. So his Son would call out to him, my God, why have you abandoned me? And there was silence. And then the Father had asked him to give up his life to die. And so he did. So they cut down his lifeless body from the cross when the Roman centurion knew that he was dead. They slashed his side with a spear. And the blood had already separated. The heart had stopped. He was dead, stone cold dead. Roman soldiers don't make mistakes. Because there's a little caveat. If they make a mistake, they're the next one on the cross. So no, they don't make mistakes. He was stone dead. And they put him in a grave. And on the third day, he did rise again. Apoistemi. That's the root word here. Ana estemi. Ana, which means again, is one of its meanings, and estemi, to stand upon your feet. So that this one who was physically destroyed, holes in his ankles and wrists, spear slashed through his side, his back torn out, down to the bone and beyond. And yet, he's back up on his feet as the Son of God, true man, our brother. And you see, just as he took the wrath of God in our place, also in our place, death can no longer hold him, because he is the Lord over life and death to begin with. So not only could death not hold him, but death can no longer hold us. You see, this is the gospel. This is the good news. This is the idea of why God did this divine being. This is his purpose in all of this. And why did it take this? I don't know. I don't have the slightest idea. Why was this the only remedy to the malady of our brokenness in this dumpster fire world we live in? That where the God looks at us and says, not a single one of you, not a single one is tzaddik or righteous. All broken. And yet he does this for us. Not only can we not ask why, I don't even understand how. I can describe it, that he was hit with the mastigates, the whip, the scourge, but I can't describe what it means for the wrath of the Father to be poured out on a human being. I cannot comprehend what that means. That the weight of the sin of us all was placed on his shoulders, and in that state, his Father destroyed him, turned his back on him, and walked away as he dies. This is what the Father did for us. And what this means is that there's no longer wrath between this divine being and us. That now he offers love, forgiveness, compassion, kindness, adoption, reconciliation, mercy, peace, and so many more things to all humankind. You see, that's the nature of the gospel. Just as in our brokenness we're identical, but in what God has done for us, not what we've done for ourselves, but what the Father has done for us, we're again the same. I don't care who you are. It doesn't matter. Just like in our brokenness, it doesn't matter who we are. Before this act of God, again, we are identical. It is not right to try to make distinctions among people. That's vile. When it comes to the gospel, that's a vile exercise in hatred. The gospel is the Father's open arms to every and all humankind. No exceptions. Doesn't matter who you are, or what you've done, or what you're doing. Because when you become a Christian, you don't stop in this brokenness. We continue in this brokenness, in this dumpster fire, and this decay, and it doesn't end. It's just that we know a smile on God's face rather than his face of wrath and anger. And that smile is all we need. It welcomes, it forgives, it reconciles, it calls us his children. sons and daughters of God, children of the resurrection. These are all terms that God uses to describe us. So, that's the text for today from the Gospel of Luke, the 18th chapter, particularly verse 33. What God the Father would do through his Son for us all. Again, this has been retired Pastor Karl Schmidt, from Calvary Lutheran Church, the little Lutheran church in Amherst, New York. We've been closed for the last 2 months. We're going to open again in March for services again. See how that goes. We're still battling COVID, but more of us now are vaccinated. And so hopefully we'll be safe as we open the church again. So take care. If you haven't had your vaccine shot, go get it. And besides, that's not even over. It looks like a fourth one. It's going to be a regular thing, like the regular flu shot we get. It's just going to be part of life. I mean, just get used to it type thing. Oh well, take care.